Welcome to Unscripted Gaming. My name is Josh.
My name is still Mike, I think.
My name is Stan.
Guys, how long have we been doing this intro?
That's months.
A while.
For me and you, Josh, over a year.
Yeah, and then Mike came in, and then I thought we had a good thing going. I win, then Mike win, then Stan win, and then...
Mike, you guys can't see in Skype, but Mike was looking at me like he was confused, and I was confused, and we had a moment. And, and then Mike went, and then I went and stepped on his lines, and it was horrible.
Let's just
all right,
get to it.
Take, go. No, I'm kidding. We're not
really?
doing anything. No, we're going to move forward. So, gentlemen.
Okay.
It's GDC time.
And we've had news popping off out the wazoo here.
Yeah, a lot of stuff's
been
happening. Mike, can you talk to me about PlayStation?
Yeah, I can talk to you about PlayStation. We have a couple of big PlayStation things coming out around this time here.
Tell me about the one that starts off with the thing on my eyeballs.
Well, we can start with the thing on your eyeballs, and that is the announcement of at least the price announcement of PlayStation VR, which is, just for the. I'll go into the box contents here, but the unit itself is coming in at $399 US. $399 US, which is, I think, pretty in line with what people were thinking, and I think is an awesome price for that thing to really take off.
$200 less than the Oculus Rift.
$300 less than the Vive.
Yep.
So far it's the cheapest. And it's the easiest to integrate since you can just use your PS4 and not a $1,500 gaming rig.
That's the really cool thing, just in terms of VR in general, is just how this is such a great move to put true VR gaming into so many people's homes, because there's at least 30 million PlayStation 4s out there at this point, and all of those boxes are ready for VR. It's your box contents here that you're getting the headset itself, the external processing box for the VR, power, earphones, a couple HDMI connectors and such, and a USB cable for charging. So you do need the PlayStation 4 camera on top of that, which isn't bundled for people who already have the camera, but.
And Sony did say that at some point there will be a bundle that will include everything, but at the initial release, especially geared towards those who already have that hardware, that they are not including it in the initial release bundle.
Yeah, they've actually do have a bundle that is up for pre-order now. It is $500. It's got all the things in the original set that's going for $399 here. But you're also getting the PlayStation camera, 2 Move controllers, and then just another VR game on top of that.
Okay. For how much?
Right at $500. And pre-orders for that are starting at on the 22nd.
So $100
March,
more, you get 2 Move controllers, PlayStation camera, and a game. Which those 4 editions probably would be, if you bought them separately, $200, $250 on their own. So for an extra $100, that's not a bad pack-in.
Absolutely not. And so, all the kind of launch specific details aside, again, I think this is such an awesome thing for a lot of different reasons, in my opinion. Just because, it's such a great. You don't have to drop $1,000 on a PC just to be in a position to justify spending the $600 for an Oculus,
what's
$800
for these days? $300-$400 brand new.
$400.
Probably
They've never dropped their price from the original release price.
It wasn't it down around $350 for the holidays.
It was the Xbox One.
They were doing some holiday bundle deals through GameStop, I think.
Like you could buy for $400, you got a PS4 and a game, but they never dropped the price of you're going to need $400 to get a PS4 in some way, shape, or form.
But still,
it's not like Microsoft where they actually dropped the price $50 and said for $350 you can get this console.
Yeah, I'm seeing bundles right now at about $349.
Where at?
For a PS4. I just found Call of Duty Black Ops game, for 500 gigabyte hard drive, $350. So,
wow.
Just technicality there, but
hey, $350.
Nice. Maybe I'm incorrect.
Plus the $399. That's quick back of the napkin math. That's almost the price of the Vive on its own.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's the problem that was going to kill VR, and that's why I said it's dead on arrival. No one is paying $700 for a freaking peripheral.
I don't think nobody, because there are people who spend.
Yeah, there are people that do weird things with their
hundreds
money.
of thousands of dollars to buy racing wheels and flight sticks and other peripherals like that. So
but it's definitely an enthusiast market as opposed to.
This is going to be the VR for the consumer and not the enthusiast, not the niche person.
Oh, I agree.
Yes, it may not have as high of specs or as high of resolution as some of those other headsets, but I mean, from what I've heard from people talking at GDC about their experience with the Sony VR, it's been pretty positive.
And I think another kind of, just a quick note on the enthusiast thing. I mean, VR at the Oculus price never personally made sense at least for me at this time. But already having a PlayStation 4, and seeing that the PSVR pricing, it's definitely, I don't know if I'm going to be a day one adopter, but it's definitely something I'm a lot more open to that I probably wasn't really going to look at seriously before.
Yeah.
But I think another pretty cool thing about the PSVR in general is kind of on the flip side here is thinking about it from a developer standpoint, because part of I think some of the difficulty of developing with VR is that especially for a console environment, it's really nice because you have such a huge install base, so it kind of fixes the chicken and egg problem of no one wants to develop anything for it because there's no audience, because there's no apps, and that kind of cycle. So that's already fixed there. That every PlayStation can definitely run that. Built from the ground up.
Basically,
like the PSVR is built from the ground up.
It's a better deal for everyone. Right,
because the developers know exactly what hardware and what software the consumer of their product is going to be using.
I mean, when you do the math, go ahead.
I mean, that's a big bonus for anybody developing for the platform, because they know what they know what to expect. They know what it can do. They know what everybody has, and they can plan for that. It's a lot more difficult with things like the Oculus and the Vive, because they have to take into account so many more GPUs and graphic settings and all that stuff. Now, there are cards that are being listed as more VR friendly and that they're specifically targeting to, just like any other game out there, but it's just a lot easier when that environment is controlled.
I think just to... No, go ahead.
I think just to kind of, if we have a lot to cover, so I don't know if we want to move on here, but just to wrap it all up, I think coming in at that price point and, hearing just the response that people have been saying about the experiences here, or that they've had, I think Sony definitely put themselves in a really good position to kind of steer, what VR, maybe on a smaller scale, but be kind of VR to... Sony is the VR of in the same way Nintendo was for motion control. Like, it has that kind of potential to just break out into the mass audience that the Oculus and the Vive don't really have, which is crazy on a first generation kind of product like this.
Yeah, I can see that being the thing that people actually seek out, because it's a lot easier and a lot more straightforward. It'll be very interesting to see how it shakes out in the long run, but I'm very excited. And, from people talking at the press events, it even sounded like the press who were there for the reveal were actually pretty impressed and excited about the things that Sony said and the price point and all that stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out here over the next year or so.
Definitely.
Stan, final thoughts on Sony VR?
It's the best decision that's been made so far. Like, for the cost of, what is it? Let's say $350 for a PS4 right now, plus another $500. So $850 to get you a full PlayStation experience with the VR headset. That's cheaper than any other VR setup you're gonna find on the market by half, by a factor of 50%. So yeah,
and then that's huge.
Yeah.
That is
gigantic.
gigantic.
And I think, if I remember correctly, I think they might have mentioned this on somewhere on Giant Bomb and a few other places when I was reading about it, that actually this $400 price point, Sony will actually be making a profit on. They're not going to be the loss leader, and they're not going to be selling it at cost like the other headsets are. They're actually going to be making a profit on this peripheral, so that whatever they've done with it, they've done it well. So hats off to Sony.
Yeah.
I still stand by my original statement of VR is a flash in the pan. We will see it come, and much like motion controls, we will see it go. Motion controls were big.
Yeah,
3D TV was big.
I disagree.
Exactly.
I think I personally disagree, just because I think A, there are a lot of outside of gaming applications, and B, there is just so much more money getting poured into it by so many more different people than the motion control stuff. But I also could be very wrong. Who knows? But
I think I guess I'd say I'm a little closer to Stan here. I certainly want to hold off on any sort of VR investment until I see that, if it's more than just a flash in the pan. But again, I think Josh brings up a lot of really valid points here. So again, just excited to see where this goes, and I think Sony's made quite a strong move here.
Yeah, but so kind of going back to something I said earlier, with developers knowing exactly what hardware they're going to be facing in a development environment, that might not necessarily be the case in the near future, may it not, Mike?
This is correct. As reported by Kotaku's Patrick Klepek, some of his sources are indicating that Sony is working on a so-called PlayStation 4.5 that is going to have, again, according to his sources, and this is kind of a rumor, so take this commentary with a grain of salt here.
Biggest grain of salt.
Just the big old blockiest of block salt you can find.
Lick. It's just basically a cube of salt lick.
It's going to have increased graphical power in games running at 4K resolution. And
some people, they even said possibly with the external processor unit that the PlayStation VR uses currently will be packed into this new PlayStation 4.5.
And it just in terms of it being able to produce 4K resolution for games. I mean, the current PlayStation, not a lot of games are hitting the 1080p 60 frames. So to see a jump to 4K is very big. Mm-hmm. And I'm just when I saw that that he was reporting that it's going to be playing, not just supporting streaming of 4K content or a 4K, but truly playing 4K games. It's just I'm skeptical. I mean that is a tremendous jump in terms of resolution here, and I'm curious to see if this is just going to be, because Sony has been very open and willing to do pretty major hardware redesigns going all the way back to the PlayStation 1. So I'm curious to see. I guess it would just be surprising to me. I mean, because considering that those previous redesigns haven't seen. I mean, there have been some performances in terms of power consumption, just making it more efficient. But there's never been a kind of that big of a jump in terms of performance would be unprecedented in terms of how Sony's handled their hardware in the past. So
here's why I think this isn't as outlandish as Mike and Stan seem to think, or as unbelievable. And Phil Spencer.
Hey, you all know my opinion on this.
You said you got a massive grain of salt, so I'm going to assume you think it's a bullshit story. But hey, I could be wrong.
That's okay. Yeah, I actually think that this would be if Sony released a 0.5 version of their console, like a fully updated version of their console, less than 3 years after their initial console launched, you've completely messed over your console base, because they've sold how many units? Like what, 10 million, something
At
like that?
least, I think it might be higher on that. Let me double check this
Yeah,
figures real quick.
while Mike's double checking that, they've sold millions and millions and millions of units, with people in good faith knowing that Sony's going to deliver a product for it, probably what they're assuming, 8 to 5 years. What's up, Mike?
And it's not just a quick update on that figure. It was reported by CNBC on January 2016, topping 35 million worldwide.
My gosh. Well, those are numbers Microsoft would love to hear for the Xbox One, but it's probably not even that close.
They'll get there
35 million.
eventually.
Wow. So 35 million consoles, and to tell everyone, by the way, we realize some of you just got this console last year. We've upgraded a new one and thus made the one that you have kind of obsolete.
Well, here's my thing. One reason why I think this isn't is not a false story is because Phil Spencer from Microsoft during GDC was also talking about some mid-cycle upgrades for the Xbox One. So kind of seeing, you think of it like Xbox One 2016 edition or Xbox One 2017 edition. So you have both console manufacturers talking about this kind of potential upgrade to their hardware.
And so, sorry, go ahead.
Well, and I don't think it's something that a consumer would be that unused to or that pissed off about.
No. This is a good way to kill the console market, what we're talking about right now.
Well, I mean, okay, first off, the cell phone market does it even worse, and people still line up to buy the newest iPhone, even though it's got
I've heard Phil Spencer's BS
half a gig of RAM and a slightly better processor, but with the way that both of these consoles are now designed and their architecture and the back end and the way they run, it's a lot easier for things to be uniform over some different,
and scaled up in terms of
and adjusted. But also, the console's released already at a massive power gap, and it's just going to get bigger. But the thing is, processors are going to get cheaper, RAM's going to get cheaper, storage is going to get cheaper, graphics processing units are going to get cheaper. So they can get a more powerful console for the same price. Now, they could even set up something where they could say that somebody who's owned the previous generation could turn in their console for a credit towards the new one. And I think that's something that would benefit people greatly. Now, they could say that, the games will run on this, PlayStation 4 back to generation 2013, but it'll run best on this year's. Now, there can be some sort of cutoff point, but I think it's something that needs to happen for the console industry and the console market to keep some parity with PC gaming.
I disagree with you wholeheartedly.
And that's fine, but I think especially with the cell phone market,
not an applicable example, but go ahead.
Why not?
So for the cell phone market, it comes down to when people upgrade their cell phones, they're upgrading it for minute reasons. Like, let's say I recently upgraded my cell phone from an iPhone 5 to an iPhone 6S. I did that about a month and a half ago. The only reason why I upgraded my iPhone 5 is because it stopped working. Otherwise, I'd still have it. And I held onto that thing for over 3 years. Cell phones have this tendency to get more use than a console. You use it for calls, you use it for text, you use it for keeping in contact with emails and
Nobody
whatnot.
calls on the cell phone anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I actually, no, you're absolutely right. Like my lifetime call usage of my iPhone right now that I've had for I think it's actually been over for 2 months is 6 hours altogether, but over 500 gigs of internet.
Oh boy.
Yeah, unlimited plans. The point I'm getting at is, few people upgrade their cell phone because they actually need to. If they introduce a console that is a 0.5 version upgrade, they will do exactly what Nintendo has done with the new 3DS, and they'll start making games that only work with that console. Thus, you're splitting the market in half. And when Nintendo did it, and they kind of get away with it because only a couple of their games have actually taken advantage of that feature and said, yeah, we only are going to release on the new 3DS because of this or that reason. If you were to do that continuously with all consoles, you're going to destroy the console market and say, you know what, these are just becoming nothing more than PCs. I'll just buy a PC and be done with it. Or people will just say, I'm not going to buy this console. I'm going to wait for the 0.5 version.
PC, the console market is gonna go, and I really think that this is them getting ahead of that curve and really kind of starting to plan for the future of what is the console market going to look like. How do we market a console that is something separate than a PC that people buy to play games, and how do we give them a good, tight, controlled experience in that box with giving them a lot of other home entertainment features and web browsing and stuff like that. And I think that this is
who uses web browsing on their console?
Crazy people. But
literally, who?
I mean, I did it once.
Go. I mean, yeah, I did it like in 2006.
I'm using that as an example. But it's not that they, necessarily would release this version upgrade every year or even every 2 years. But I think it's important because, especially with the way that I think they're designing games, I don't think they need to release, the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox 720 or the Xbox 2 or whatever the fuck they're going to call it. I think this is a way for them to say, this is the Xbox, this is the PlayStation. Every few years, we're going to make that product a little better. We're still going to support the legacy hardware, and a lot of developers are going to do that because A, the development environment's easy.
They have to
do that, or B, they can't not play to that entire audience base because that's how they're going to make most of their money. But for people who want to have the most beautiful experience on a console and want to have something that they can say, yeah, this box is pretty close to a PC. I think it's important. I think it's going to happen, and I don't think we're going to have a massively bad reaction to it. I haven't even seen very much on the internet about these rumors about people reacting poorly to it. So I think it's something that the market is
because the common person that uses the internet is not always the common person that buys a console. Most people,
no, absolutely not.
Most people that buy a console, they want to go into their local Walmart or Target, buy the thing, buy a game and maybe an extra controller for the thing, plug in the HDMI cable, plug in the power outlet, turn it on, you play a game, job's a good. If you start telling them, like, oh, you might have to upgrade it once every couple of years, you have to get into a bunch of software updates, and maybe you have to put in some
extra... They already have to get into software updates all the time.
You're absolutely right about software updates, and people complain about that all the time, and rightfully so, in my opinion. It was the worst in the PS3 if you never had the PS3. That's another podcast for another day. 45 minutes, some of them. All right, I'm going to stop right there. Just stop. The point I'm getting is when you start explaining to players or to people that commonly want to buy the things, hey, you have to upgrade the thing, or you have to upgrade this part of the thing, or if you have to upgrade the hard drive, or upgrade the RAM, or upgrade the graphics card in your console, you're killing your console market. People don't want to deal with that. Most
but that's
people
why
don't
they just release a new. They would release a new box at the $400 retail price and just say, hey, this is the 2017 edition of the console. It plays the same games. It just plays them a little better, runs a little faster. Mm-hmm. Your console can still play the games. It's just not going to be as good. And I think that's
the way that I was hearing it or understanding it is it will be a newer console that will be much more powerful than the one before, but they're going to call it a 0.5 version. If that's the case, I guarantee to you there will be developers that will make games specifically for that newer console, unless they have to
that's
like
my
or something.
My concern here. I mean, because we've been talking about how it's going to be if it was on like a 2-year cycle, for example, that it was going to be kind of smaller jumps here. But at least in terms of what going back to Mr. Klepek's article here. The jump to 4K is big. Like 4K gaming, assuming at least about 30 frames a second, which is pretty solid, and what you probably wouldn't want it much lower than that, or else it'd be really not fun.
If they release it 4K,
I mean, that is a is that are we in terms of going forward? Would we be expecting that kind of jump every couple of years? Because that is a massive jump in power, at least as far as I understand it. And additionally here, I mean, developers already are used to this on PC, but it's going to take a big buy-in from developers to understand that they're going to need to support a lot of SKUs in terms of just the power of those consoles. So, how much time, is it worth developing 4K support for their game when only a million people can even process that versus the 40 million who are perfectly fine not having that. So it's gonna, and you're obviously gonna have Sony backing a couple of their own guys, to kind of get the ball rolling on some features like that. But eventually it's gonna come down to a calculation of, is this time to support this feature like 4K gaming, for example, worth the investment from the developer? So to the point that they can still make a return on that game, because if having that PS 4.5 only on your game box, like this will only run on 4.5 only. That is a lot of developers would not be happy with that.
Yeah.
And it's gonna take a while for them to. I mean, obviously that kind of exists on PC, but on console that's never really existed before, and I think that's going to be a very might be a dicey transition, especially from a retail standpoint.
Typically for development of games, you develop it for the most powerful machine available, and then you downscale it for the actual release. So it's very possible that the games that we play nowadays were developed with 4K in mind, but they were just downscaled upon release. So maybe there's a bit of code that they basically patch in and say, all right, you can play Destiny in 4K. If you're confused, well, the answer is it's always been there. That honestly, it's extremely possible.
Too late. We've lost this data.
Right. Well, that's just something I guess we'll just have to see, when we get there. And like I've said before, I'm pretty skeptical that a PS 4.5 would have true 4K gaming in the first place. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
I'm very skeptical of it.
I'm not surprised that they're working on a console redesign for the PlayStation 4. I'm just surprised that it's going to be that big of a jump.
Yeah.
But again, especially in concert with what Microsoft has been saying, I think we're definitely headed towards this future, whether we like it or not.
I think PlayStation 4.5 available holiday 2017. But hey, what do I know? That's my guess. And I think it's a good thing. And I think both Xbox and PlayStation
first.
What? You heard
it here first.
I got the inside
hot
scoop.
Scoops.
Hot scoops.
Get your hot scoops. Hot scoops. Hot scoops.
Moving on.
We got them. You need them.
We spent the last 15 minutes on a rumor.
Hot cards.
No.
That was bad.
Not anymore.
Josh says that.
Because
wow.
they're liquid cooled. Just read the damn article.
Well, so another thing that came out around the GDC time is AMD has announced a Pro Duo graphics card. They're saying it's built for virtual reality, yada yada, but I mean it's really just that it's a powerful card. But it is a dual GPU built into a single GPU slot, so it's a dual chip that can fit into a single chip slot. It is oh man, I can't English right now. It is solitarily liquid cooled. So the chip itself has its own liquid cooling system that the heat will then vent into the case and get vented out that way. But it is two Radeon R9 Fury X's put into one chip, and does have a bit of a hefty price tag, $1,500. But before you think that's a little too pricey, obviously this isn't for everybody. But the last dual GPU card that the Radeon released was $1,500 at launch, and the GPU from NVIDIA, the Titan Z, cost $3,000. So in graphics cards terms, in high-end graphic cards terms, this isn't a completely outrageous. But I think the biggest thing is that they're getting a dual GPU into a single GPU form factor, which just shows where we've come in the shrinking of our processors, in heat reduction, and just power that we can fit into smaller and smaller silicon every day.
Have you ever had a Radeon graphics card?
I don't think that I have. Technically, I did when I had the Wii, because that's powered by AMD. So
No, you're right. The PS4.
But never. I don't think I've had one for PC.
The PS4 and Xbox One are powered by AMD GPUs. If I'm not. Yeah, they are. They're powered by AMD GPUs. I've had an AMD GPU before, and I can tell you right now, it doesn't compare to NVIDIA. It just doesn't. I like AMD. I really do like them as a company because the processor in my computer is an AMD. But when it comes to power and performance per actual cost, you're much better off getting an NVIDIA machine. NVIDIA card, much better. So if Radeon says, "Hey, we have a virtual reality card that's specifically built for virtual reality," hey, that's cool. Just get an NVIDIA card for the same price and probably get triple the power. That's honestly how I feel about it.
And you might be right, but the thing is, this is an attractive piece of hardware just in the rule of cool factor, and I think for most people in this who are thinking about buying this is something that could do, because hey, I can get the power of 2 chips in one. But it's something that can just push the market forward. It can put NVIDIA to say, well, fuck, we can do something like that, and then they do. They get their Titan Z down into a smaller form factor and really kind of push the limits of what is possible, and those
push it to the limit.
But those advances eventually trickle down into the more consumer grade.
Push it to the limit.
Come out. So the 980 replacement might see something like that, or it's something that pushes the market forward. And being somebody who's always fascinated about hardware, because I just think it's neat, hearing them being able to put 2 cards in one is just pretty cool. Plus the self-contained, that's the word I was looking for. Self-contained liquid cooling, I think is also pretty neat.
I think it's...
What will you do when they put 3 cards in one?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. But, life is marketing, Stan. Haven't you learned that yet?
That's a fair assessment.
If you're not paying for it,
That's silly.
But it's true. Think about it. Anyway, another graphics card news. This is kind of neat and more applicable to me, really, because I'm somebody who games on a laptop. Razer has announced an external graphics card solution, in which now it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, because it works with certain computers and whatnot. It's a newer product, but basically what you can do is you can get external graphics cards, full-size graphics cards, up to I think 500 watts or so, but plug it into the shell and then plug it into your laptop, and it seems like initial reports are saying that there's not really much lag or any notice of hitching between that, but basically a way to upgrade your power of your laptop, because if anybody has a laptop knows it is pretty much impossible to upgrade it. So just a cool little thing that is happening, especially when people like that mobility. They like the small form factor, but they want to go home to their battle station and plug in and really be able to beef up their stuff. Just another...
That's cool.
Yeah. I don't, it's not going to set the world on fire.
That's pretty much all I got.
It's not something for everybody, but for those who are interested in that kind of option, could be a very interesting thing to look into.
It looks like something you would actually use, Josh.
Absolutely. If they were to make a one of these that would work with my current laptop,
it won't.
I would absolutely consider looking into that rather than getting a new laptop or upgrading to a desktop of some kind, because if I can just pay a couple $100 and boost my performance in such a way, that's pretty much all I need. My laptop has a big ass hard drive, plenty of RAM. The only limitation I'm really going to run into is going to be that graphics processor.
Yeah.
So something like this would be a great solution for me. And again, now it only works with you buy certain ones for certain kinds. Dell has one, Alienware has one. I don't know how much they're going to support or what it's going to look like. I think it's coming out in April, if I see yet, in the U.S. So, but definitely a product and technology to keep an eye on in the future.
Here's my problem with this device. It is a device meant to amplify your gaming experience for your gaming laptop. Amplify your gaming experience for your already expensive game. So if you buy a $1,000 like Alienware, and let's face it, they're going to be more than $1,000. Or if you buy a $1,000 or more Razer, and these are gaming laptops. If you find, oh, you know what, this laptop isn't delivering the power that I need. Let me buy this $500 device to go ahead and enhance my gaming experience. Okay, at that point you're throwing a lot of money around. There's a certain point where you might start asking the question, maybe I should just get a desktop.
And I can see that argument, but for some people they may have restrictions as to why they can't have a desktop. They may not want to have the hassle of it. They may not have a big enough. I've heard of people who don't want to get them because they're really big and they just don't have the space, and a gaming laptop works better for them. But also, for me, my gaming laptop is now 2 or 3 years old, and I still run most games pretty well. But here in the near future, I might think, I want to keep this laptop, and I don't want to spend $1,000 to upgrade to a new laptop or another desktop, but I want to pay a couple $100 to kind of boost my power and keep it.
I mean, $1,000 isn't a couple hundred.
Can I sell you a PlayStation 4.5?
Take my money.
No, sorry, I'm just being a jerk. And
no, I just
you're crossing the streams. Don't do that.
Again, it's not for everybody, and I don't think it's a product that's going to set the world on fire. But I think it's neat that people are thinking about ways to solve that problem.
I would totally use this for work, like for my laptop at work. If I can plug into one of these and I can get some work done while working on some of my games, yeah, that would be awesome. But it's very, very specific use. Like I would basically just leave it at work, and once you buy it for one product, you're basically telling your company, like, you're locking yourself into that product. Hey, company, we're going to lock ourselves into Alienware products from now on, or we're going to lock ourselves into Razer products from now on because we just bought this $5,000 thing, and it's only going to work on Razer products. That's like the biggest hang-up that I would have with this. It's not universal. Yeah. And there's no reason for that.
So we're going to get to our final story in just a second. One last little thing of GDC news I wanted to cover before we move on. Some people may have heard that Xbox One came out and said, oh, we're totally willing to have cross-platform play, wink, wink, Sony, if they're willing to. And Sony kind of said it's kind of going to be up to the devs of whether or not that happens. The Rocket League dev actually came out and said they've got it figured out. They know how to make the cross-platform between Xbox One and PS4 work. Not sure if we're going to see that anytime soon or what form that's going to take, but, they have been talking about the fact that it's something that they've got figured out. So we might be seeing some Xbox One, PS4 crossplay here in the near future. Now on to our last story for today, since we're running, we want to kind of try and keep this a little shorter. Somebody's getting sued, aren't they, Stan?
Yep. Everyone's, third or fourth favorite internet critic?
Heyo!
Probably not your first.
Well, that was really hot.
Fine.
Sorry.
He has some
I'm
opinions
sure
that even I don't agree with.
some folks out there who go to him for number one, but yeah, most.
Yeah.
I mean, number one is obviously Unscripted Gaming, am I right?
He's the person that they go to when their other main outlets are out of content for them to consume, and they're like, oh, let's see what this guy's up to today.
For your outrage review.
Yeah.
To be fair, he makes decent content. I like all of his content. I don't agree with it all, but I do like it.
Yeah, he's one of those people that even when you don't agree with him, you can find his particular style amusing. Sometimes the shtick gets a little old and you gotta take a break, but most of the time you're like, ha, oh you.
He's not movie Bob. Oh!
Oh, man.
Oh!
And how much longer can we talk about him before we say his name? Let's just keep going.
Okay. So,
Unscripted Movie Bob. Our dedicated
Unscripted
Movie Bob podcast coming soon
Our Movie Bob podcast.
to a channel near you.
Jim Sterling. Jim Sterling is being sued by Digital Homicide. In case you guys don't know the story of Digital Homicide, that's a shame. You should really follow up on that. What happened is October of 2014, Jim Sterling reviewed a game called The Slaughtering Grounds. It was done by this company. It was known as Imminent Uprising at the time, but then they changed their name to Digital Homicide because the name.
Are you sure the game's not Blood and Bacon?
No, that game's actually
a lot like Blood and Bacon.
Blood and Bacon's actually decent.
I really enjoyed playing Blood and Bacon for the podcast a few episodes ago, and I want to play more.
Don't be
surprised if you get more gameplay footage from Blood and Bacon.
Slaughtering Grounds is not a good game. It's a game made pretty much entirely out of Unity assets cobbled together. Jim Sterling harangued on the game, called it a piece of crap, said it was beyond the pale bad. That's my favorite words of describing a video game ever, by the way.
So doing a thing that critics like Jim Sterling do.
Sidebar, that's a great phrase.
Beyond the pale bad. Yeah, that is pretty awesome.
Like, I didn't even know things could be that bad, but wow, yeah, he said, that's something.
And I quote, "Oh my god, this is beyond the pale." Digital Homicide filed a false DMCA on that video and took it down. Then they have gone back and forth for the past year and a half of Digital Homicide making a piece of shit game and Jim Sterling reviewing it, and not reviewing it, just looking at it in what he calls a score play, which is the first look. Just going on the game and saying, well, look at this, Digital Homicide made another piece of shit. They actually did an interview. Jim Sterling did a hour-and-a-half long interview with the company Digital Homicide, which is two brothers, the brothers Remain. And it just became... the interview's hilarious to listen to from a third-person perspective, but I'm sure it was frustrating for Jim or for the brothers Remain because they're just going back and forth and nothing is getting done, and so on and so forth. Well, a couple months ago, Digital Homicide threatened to sue Jim Sterling. They said, stop talking about our games, stop talking about our business practice. Their business practice, by the way, is to shit as many games onto Steam as possible. Right now, Digital Homicide has been a company for only a year and a half. I need you guys to recognize that time frame, year and a half. Right now, they have 18 games on Steam.
No.
18! Just to give you a thought of what the quality of these games must be.
That's about 17 more games.
Two people
are
making these games. 18. You know by that number, none of these games are good. It's not possible.
I couldn't even think of 18 games.
Right!
I couldn't come up with the concept of 18 games in a year and a half, let alone make... So by that math, then the three of us should be able to put out about, 25, 28 games in the year and a half?
Yeah, by that logic, yeah.
More like 25% of an idea of a game.
So that was the last video Jim Sterling did. It's a 5-minute video. You can find it right now. He's not taking down any of his Digital Homicide videos because at that point that will look shady. The last video he did was only 5 minutes long where he pointed out, by the way, everyone, Digital Homicide released another game. It's called Wyatt Derp. It's basically Space Invaders, except it's in the 3/4 perspective, and you're a cowboy as opposed to a tank spaceship. And he pointed out and listed all 18 games Digital Homicide had released in the past year and a half that they have been a company, and that is amazing to me. Then, lawsuit. Jim Sterling was served with a lawsuit to appear in Arizona. He said on Twitter he's not going to be talking about it, but he is confident of the results. He's being sued for $10 million in supposed product damage, emotional distress, yeah, right, punitive damages, and loss of revenue.
I know that Jim Sterling may come across as crass or rude, but that's a lot of emotional damage. I'm just gonna say that from here.
There-
That's a hell of a lot of damage because that 10 million surely did not come from those sales. I am sorry.
No.
That's not
No.
true.
Yeah, especially because I'm
No.
looking at the game that, looking at the Steam, and most of their games go for $1 to $3. One of them being $12.
Which one is that?
So they have
Whoa,
some really
triple
high
A.
sales expectations for their numbers to be coming up with a
$10 million.
$2.26 million in product damage.
In direct.
There's
Yeah,
I
let's
ain't no
break
lawyer,
it
but
down
there's
real quick.
No way.
$2.2 million in direct product damage. That is wow. You guys are really full of yourselves. $4.3 million in emotional, reputational, and financial distress.
So what did they do? Did they go and see how many people watched Jim Sterling's video, multiply that by, $5 and say that's
Actually,
how much
yes,
fucking
that's
money
kind
we
of
lost?
how they figured that. If you go to the Digital Homicide website and you read their blog about the lawsuit, that's kind of where they got that number.
That's outrageous. You want to something?
Well, the hope is to get them settled.
Yeah,
settled for less,
obviously. They had actually.
Oh, and finally, $5 million in punitive damage requests. Okay, go ahead.
$10.76 million. So Digital Homicide was going to represent themselves in the suit. They do not have an attorney.
What?
They don't have an attorney, and they don't have enough money, and they have a GoFundMe.
So here, I was just about to say, they
Oh,
started
man.
a crowdfunding page for their lawsuit, which they have since taken down because being the internet, started putting in donation amounts that would cause charges than rather making donations. So
Yes.
they had to
That's
take
incredible.
the crowdfunding down and said they will look for another way to seek an avenue for donations.
That's incredible.
I saw the
I should hold. Can we hold up internet? I need to get my air popper. I'll be right back. Like, oh my.
Sometimes the internet does shitty things, but sometimes you just gotta tip your hat to them because
They're representing. Oh my god. This drama.
No, they
is
don't
so-
have a lawyer because I guarantee.
I have a confession.
Yeah.
I like internet drama. I love it.
I don't like it.
It's just it sustains me.
So the reason why this is
But
important.
man, this is this is so juicy. And this is not to armchair lawyer, but unless I don't think what Jim Sterling could be really described as truly slanderous or like.
So that goes into a different thing. Technically, in some gray area, he supposedly committed libel against them. What he said was that one of the image assets that Digital Homicide used was, and I quote, stolen from someone else's website and not given credit. Jim Sterling said that in a review. Digital Homicide did not steal it, they paid for it from Shutterstock, and Shutterstock stole it from someone's DeviantArt fan page. So, Digital Homicide is trying to sue them for libel and copyright infringement in that specific wording of that specific review. Plus, they're also trying to get him for like, hey, for all the reviews that you made against us, you've thus cost us sales, thus you're hurting our business, thus you're infringing on our copyright directly. Which I think is bullshit.
Jim Sterling gave them more.
It gave them more
advertisement
visibility.
I would have never heard of Digital Homicide if it wasn't for Jim Sterling.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
really, they should be thanking him. But apparently, they've made a few videos that they published, then took down, but Jim Sterling archived on his own channel.
Oh yeah, the
Fucking
reviewer.
Idiot.
Yeah.
Saying that he was a bad reviewer and he wasn't playing the game properly. So they're not.
Oh boy.
Do yourself a favor, Mike, and if you have not watched the Jim Sterling Slaughtering Ground saga, the developer took Jim Sterling's review, overdubbed it with his own voice, and insulted Jim for not playing his game correctly and not directly emailing the developer about any bugs he found. Bear in mind, Jim Sterling paid money for this game.
This sustains.
So we're not just talking about this to dredge up internet drama. It does
No, this is
have an
important.
Impact on the gaming
That's
industry.
exactly why we're talking about it. Oh, yes. Oh my god. Okay, I'm good.
So-
I got it out of my system. I'm okay.
Well, when I read through this and I see what's happening, don't. I mean, I do, but I really don't want to see a way in which the brothers Romaine, or whatever the hell their name is, are successful in this. But
they sound like super villains,
right?
but
the
brothers.
They kind of are. They kind of are super villains in this case.
If they somehow manage to be successful, which if they can't even get lawyers, I don't know. Would be, again, big if. If they were, that could have a massive impact on games journalism, games review, and criticism of the media at large. Just for the simple fact that if it's successful, that sets a precedent of, you've said a bad thing about my product and you've really ragged on it, I'm going to sue you for loss of revenue, which...
Yes.
And obviously
that
there's a difference between,
that impacts this podcast.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, it not even just, all media.
What if the guy that made Mountain comes at us?
Here. I mean, and obviously you don't want to... I mean, there's a difference between being critical of a piece of art or media or a product and, spreading libel and slander and incorrect facts that are baseless.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, I have a hard time imagining, from my armchair lawyering, do not consult or take my advice, or any of our advice.
Good COA.
I'm available for retainer.
For like...
Stop it, Josh. He
Pro
doesn't mean
bono.
that. He does not mean that.
I know it.
No, stop it! Oh my God.
He'll sue you if you question. Oh no. Oh boy. I just have a hard time.
I'll represent you.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
I have a hard time imagining that a judge would take a look at this and be like,
"There's a case here."
I can't imagine that there's going to be. I'm really curious to see how far this goes, because it's just, this is not a very strong case.
No.
In my armchair lawyering, so I could be just talking. I could be completely wrong here, but it just doesn't really look.
But if here's a positive
great.
to take away from it too. If the brothers do somehow put up a semi-legitimate and put together defense, and they still get found in the wrong, and they don't, that will also lend some legitimacy to criticism, which has been legitimate for a long time. But really, just say, hey, look, people are going to have their opinions, and you know what? You're just going to need to put out a better product, and some people aren't going to like it, and they're gonna put out to their audience their opinion of it, and that's just how it's gonna be, and you have to be okay with that, because that's criticism. That is what consumers expect from their journalists when they are getting ready to make a decision for a product, because they're spending their hard-earned money on something, and they want to know what somebody that they respect thinks of that product. And if they don't like it, they don't like it, and you can't regulate that. And you shouldn't also not be able to regulate them saying, I don't think this is a good product. I think it's a steaming hot pile of garbage.
Just trash water. Just straight garbage water.
Yep.
The fact that the brothers Romaine, I have to give them credit for this. They sacked up and they did it. They've been threatening to do it for over a year. And they finally served Jim Sterling a summons to court because he said some bad things about the shitty game.
Mommy,
Mommy, with an S.
What I know,
Jim says something mean about my macaroni art. Can we get him?
Jim's gonna frame that letter. If I know anything about Jim Sterling,
he will.
He's probably framed it already. He's gonna take that shit to like the Cole's photo studio and be like, "Can you have this printed on a tapestry for me?"
He has alluded on
Can
Twitter,
I get this printed on the canvas board?
He has alluded that he admits he's a bit nervous and spit last Saturday at the pub, because even though nothing says he should lose this case, the Constitution on his side, there still is that point where, technically speaking, in a bit of a gray area, this is, like Mike said, armchair lawyer.
Yeah,
he did possibly commit libel. Possibly. I don't know. I don't know if that's considered libel. I don't think it is.
It's just...
But
I just think
I'm not a lawyer.
That,
I'm not a judge.
Yeah, if I think a good lawyer, I'm sure he's going to have he has access to a strong legal team, and I feel like the judge taking a look at the story surrounding this case, I mean, I can imagine that there's going to, even despite that libel, I feel like that's going to be, if that is addressed, it's obviously going to get like $20, not It's just I don't think there's much of a case there because they certainly haven't really done to.
So
they haven't really done enough to justify that case. I mean, the fact that they uploaded a video basically like just punking Jim Sterling, like that those kind of things do a lot to really kind of undermine that case.
Well, here at the very least, since they're the ones bringing the case where they have to be the ones to prove to the judge, to the whoever, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Jim Sterling really had this massive of an impact, and that the things that he said with knowledge that he was wrong, and that he didn't make any effort to correct that in some fashion. So I just don't think they can do that. I don't think they can do that on any single part of the case, let alone the whole case together. So they
don't even have money for a lawyer.
Yeah, and I think
get your popcorn here.
Is that what you're doing?
I don't think Jim has anything to be worried about.
No, he said in another tweet he's feeling very confident about things, and I'm sure he talked to his lawyer, and his lawyer said, "You're all right. Just keep quiet. All right, you're all right." But that means he does have to actually waste his time going to Arizona to actually get represented in this case. And the brothers Romaine don't even have a lawyer lined up, or they can't afford a lawyer to get this going? I don't know. So digital homicide is mud in the game industry now. I mean, the brothers Romaine will just pretty much...
they already were.
They already were, but had they made a good game, they could have, dug their way out. Like, Jim Sterling brought this up in that same video I was telling you about. Had the brothers Romaine dug in their heels and said, you know what, we're tired of getting harangued by this guy. Let's just actually take the time to make a good... They know they make shitty games. They're perfectly aware. They don't care. They're in it to make money. So had they dug in their heels and said, you know what, we're going to actually take this seriously and make a good game, Jim Sterling said, I would have been the first ones to congratulate them on making a brilliant product. So this is them saying, we don't care if we're going to make a good game or not. We just don't want you to insult our shitty games. You're out the game industry. No one's going to hire you. Good luck with the indie scene, because no company's ever going to look at you seriously. Ever. Again.
Oh, no. And again, that is the right of critics to criticize. That is what they do.
Oh, suing a critic? You're done. You are done.
Exactly. That's just really...
Yeah.
That's why I think any judge who looks at this, other than that kind of detail we had talked about, is just going to say, really?
Yeah.
In 2016? You know how many times this is? People have been trying to do this since, like, the Warner Brothers were like, what? You don't want to see a picture of a lion in this film? Come on. Like, they've been trying that shit for since.
Can I just say that Jim Sterling, ever since he went solo and left The Escapist, he's had many indie companies attack him and false DMCA him, content ID his videos, try to get his videos taken down, threaten him, call his offices and threaten his employees, because he's relatively large. I mean, he makes $10,000 a month from Patreon. That's not chump change. Let's be honest here. So he has a small team working for him. But this is the first time a company actually went fully litigious about it. This is the first time a developer actually threw some skin in the game and said, no, we're going to take you to court. That's big. That is big.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting to watch how it shakes out.
Oh, I'm going to watch this.
The coming years, because, it's not going to get so much.
It'll be interesting to see how well this sustains me.
This is off screen.
Mike's going to be getting a shipment of just a fucking...
Of popcorn.
Of popcorn.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you should keep up on the videos, Mike. They're amazing to watch.
Yeah. This podcast is getting pretty long in the tooth here, fellas.
Speaking of keeping up with the videos...
Ooh.
Yeah. fucking
10 out of 10. Yes.
Knocked it down.
That wasn't bad. That was not bad at all.
Goes wild. Anyway, if you want to be kept up with these videos, make sure you click the subscribe button here on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook. Just search in the box Unscripted Gaming, or follow us on Twitter at @unscript_gaming. Send us a line, drop us a note, leave us a comment. Mike really, 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 really wants to answer a user question of some sort on a podcast, so you could be the very first one.
Send a dumb question, and I'll give you a dumb.
Yeah, but he wants like a question.
We
that
should
he
do
can
some
answer
on air.
On
You
air.
do it on air, Stan.
He wants
on
it.
air.
So
well, I got one from.
Send us dumb questions. We'll give you dumb answers.
I got one from someone a couple weeks ago. When do we normally stream? That was actually a pretty good question.
Fucking random ass times.
That's a horrible answer.
Last week I streamed every day. The week before I think I streamed once or twice. I had a random drunk stream on a Saturday one time. So there's no set schedule. Just you want to know how to find out? Make sure you keep an eye on Facebook and Twitter, because I always post before we go live. So
that is fair.
And generally it's going to be in the evenings, so around usually get started around 9 Eastern time.
Yeah, very rarely before that.
Yeah.
And we'll usually go for a couple hours during the weekdays.
Yeah. So yeah.
Cool.
That sounds
happy
good.
Birthday, Twitter. Seeing as we're recording on Twitter's 10th birthday.
Are we?
Yeah, Today's Twitter's 10th birthday. So
I didn't get them anything. Did you guys get them
follow
anything?
us on Twitter.
Congrats on becoming
That's
a new cesspool of social media, Twitter. Good job.
I'm shutting this podcast down. We're going on. Thank you for watching Unscripted listening to Jesus Christ. I'm gonna try that again. Thank you for listening to Unscripted Gaming.
Wow.
I'm Josh.
Yeah, try that again.
I'm Mike.
I'm Stan.
Peace.
Very good games.